Hi there. I thought it'd be fun if we did some Q&A. So today I picked a question from our awesome community here, and that is, how did you know how to start your healing journey once you knew you were really affected by your mother's drinking early on? So before I dive into that, if you're new here, my name is Jody Lamb, and I am an author, a speaker, and an educator. And since 2009, I've been helping other adult children of alcoholics to heal and create joyful lives. And this all began way back in 2009 when I realized that I had been extremely negatively affected by my experiences growing up with an alcoholic mom. And I have several other videos talking about my personal story. But I really didn't begin my healing journey until that year when I was feeling completely desperate. I really didn't look forward to anything. I was working a lot. I was completely obsessed with fixing my mom. I thought it was my job to help cure her, to get her to finally stop drinking, to accept help. And my whole world was wrapped around working in a very fast paced, demanding job and taking care of my little sister and just surviving day to day amid the chaos of everything that was going on with my mom's drinking. And I had heard from my grandmother, my mother's mom, way back when I was 13 years old about Al Anon support group meetings, which are for family and friends of people who love those who suffer from alcoholism. And then I also had chatted about support group meetings with an interventionist I had reached out to a few years before then about trying to convince my mom to stop drinking. Of course, that was unsuccessful, but that's a story for another day. I'd reached this point where I was so stressed and so depressed that I didn't look forward to anything. Everything in my life was just an obligation day in and day out, just surviving every day. I had nothing to look forward to. And in a lot of ways, it felt like a life sentence. I couldn't imagine life feeling any different than it did that day. I watched other people around me, and I was in my 20s, and it felt like everyone had a much more carefree life. They were settling into their careers, getting married, doing fun things, and I just felt like I didn't have any kind of life of my own. And I thought, I am not I'm not going to survive this. I remember specifically having this epiphany moment about it one morning when I was driving to work. And I just thought, I have to do something to change how I feel because I'm not going to survive this. Like somehow, some way, my health is going to deteriorate. Something's going to happen and I won't survive this. I knew it was having that kind of a physical impact on me. The only thing I could think to do to start this process of trying to feel better was to go to an Al-Anon support group meeting. I'd only heard about it from these few people, and honestly, I felt like it was not for me. I felt like a giant waste of time because I still needed a solution to my mom's drinking. Because at that point, I still didn't realize that it was gotten to the point where I was very ill because I was so codependent. I was so focused on my mom. So I went to that Al Anon meeting the first time, forced myself to go, and I had low expectations. I honestly thought that it would be just a bunch of little old ladies sitting around complaining about their husbands who are alcoholics, and it didn't seem productive at all. I needed a solution. I needed action. I needed my mom to finally stop drinking because my happiness depended on it. That's how ill my thinking was. So I went into that Al Anon support group meeting and I started just listening. And that's the thing about support group meetings. You don't have to talk. You can just be a sponge. And that's what I highly recommend people to do is just absorb the stories of others. Because one by one, I listened to the people around the table share their experiences. And the stories were from decades ago and they'd healed or they'd learned how to deal with things differently, or they were still actively living with or coping with the effects of the drinking with someone they love. And they were variations of my story. They were describing how I felt. And it was in that moment that I really, truly recognized that I no longer had my big mom drinking problem to solve. I had the problem of the fact that I was ill and I needed to focus on me and that I was there for me. And I ended up speaking even though I didn't have to. And I just said, I've lost control of my life. Everything is a mess. I've been completely obsessed with fixing my mom. And there was this old man across the table from me, and he pushed this box of tissues across the table at me. And he cleared his throat, and I will never forget it. He said, Jody, you put the keys into the ignition, the wheels are in motion, and you are on your way, and life will be forever better from this point on. He said it with such confidence, and I believed him. And you know what? He was completely right. That act of admitting that the drinking had caused me to stop taking care of myself, to completely lose control of my life, was the turning point for me. So that's when I knew that I needed more education about what the heck had happened to my family. That's when I really focused on reading all the books about the science of addiction, about adult child of an alcoholic syndrome, about how much a family is affected by someone they love who suffers from a substance use disorder or any kind of addiction. As I just kept absorbing more information, I really started to see clearly what I needed to do next. With all that education, I had the realization that I was completely normal and I had a normal reaction to growing up in that kind of environment. And that was freeing. And I also didn't feel alone because my whole life I spent my whole life really focused on hiding the fact that my mom had a drinking problem because I was ashamed. When I realized just how extremely common it is worldwide, then I was free to recognize that I was totally normal, and that helps me see what I needed to focus on, what challenges I faced as a grown up because of my experiences growing up like that. As I absorbed all that information through the books, through the support group meetings, and then eventually starting therapy focused on therapists who had ACOA or dysfunctional family experience, then I could clearly see like specifically what I needed to do next. One of the key aspects of my journey was thinking about what I loved to do as a kid because I had to grow up so quickly and be a miniature adult to take care of things in the household and in my life that were not being taken care of because of my mom's drinking. Then I could really see what would bring me joy as an adult. One of the things that I loved to do was write. So I enrolled in a creative writing class at my local community college, and I just did it for fun. I loved it, and that gave me some creative freedom. And that also made me realize that I did not have a life sentence. In fact, I had abundant opportunity to create my own life. My life was not set by my parents, by the generations of addiction repeating in my family, that I had the ability through focused hard work with therapy, self-care, the support groups, the education, to create a whole new life. And I did it. And so I truly believe that with this focus, that anyone can overcome their past experiences. It's not easy, but I am one of millions of people who has done it. And creating that path of knowing what to do, what steps to take to get from this horrible point in your life to a life you love begins with the education, going to support group meetings, reading the books, recognizing how exactly you were affected, what areas you need to focus on. I am so grateful for all of the resources that are available today that didn't exist even back in 2009 when I started talking about this and researching and understanding what I needed to do. There's so much help available, and it begins by just recognizing that it's time for you to put the time into that. I created a free guide for adult children of alcoholics who have recognized that they were affected by their past experiences, and the link to get that guide is in the description. I created it because in 2009, when I was starting my journey, I wished that there had been something like that, kind of an overview of how to get started and what resources are available. So, if you're ready to get started on your healing journey, I highly recommend that you sign up for that guide and get started today on your journey. I am so rooting for you. Let me know in the comments if how you got started on your healing journey or how you're thinking about getting started on your own healing journey. What advice or thoughts would you give someone who's just getting started? One of the most incredible parts of this community that we have is that we can share our wisdom and our stories to help one another. Thanks for being here.